When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Holly.
Hi, Dave.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I am super excited because we've got one of the originators of the, I guess you would say, the KROQ format. Kind of invented, along with many others, invented or created this new exciting format that got me excited about radio.
And me.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird when I, kind of flipping the dial. I moved away from KMET and KLOS, like, well, what's over here, kind of experiencing.
Okay, so you're giving a great introduction, but we have our very first guest on What Difference Does It Make?
Yeah.
First guest ever?
First guest ever.
Oh, my God.
Exactly.
We're a young podcast.
So as I told you, we're very excited to introduce Freddie Snakeskin. You know Freddie from KROQ. You know Freddie from the 90s at Mars. You know Freddie from Sirius XM. You know Freddie from, right? You know Freddie.
From the Hollywood police station.
There you go.
I haven't been there, but you also know her from KROQ HD2.
Correct.
Currently, yes.
Very good. He's come and gone from KROQ. It's just a station you just can't win.
Yeah, well, they say fourth time's a charm.
Has it been 4 times?
It has been 4 times, yes.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Wow.
Wait, so how many years?
Each one a little different. I first started there in March of 1980.
You don't just march into a radio station and they give you, hey, let's get you on the air. Where did this all start?
I had actually quite a bit of radio experience. I grew up in Phoenix and worked at a couple of top 40 stations after working my way up through high school at various crappy little suburban stations. And then I was good enough to get a job at the leading top 40 station in town. And from there, I got an offer to come to L.A. for another top 40 station, an AM station called 10Q, which you may remember. That was about 1977 or thereabouts.
Yes.
I remember.
So that's what brought me to L.A. And that fizzled out after about a year and a half. So I got a job at a radio syndicator called Watermark, doing various production tasks. I was the fastest tape editor in the West. I had a Scully with a foot pedal to release the brakes. And
Okay, we cannot take for granted good editors.
Well, especially back then.
Editors.
This was not, this was not digital editing. You had a razor.
Yeah.
And splicing tape.
And occasionally the wounds on my hands to show for it.
And so...
So 10Q.
From 10... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, to 10Q to Watermark, and then I got a part-time job at an AOR station called K-West, which you may remember also.
105.9?
Yes. Now Power
Free
106.
Power.
Yes.
And they changed format to some kind of easy listening. And so
right?
I was...
So they switched from hard rock to like Muzak?
Well, it was like hot AC. It was,
okay.
Captain and Tennille.
Yeah. Sure, because this
Do
was
it
79.
to me one more time. And
this was 1979. That's the same.
Yeah.
So that was hot stuff. That was literally.
Right.
Literally hot stuff.
I was friends with a bunch of people at KMET, which was my goal then was to get a job at KMET. So I was lobbying them pretty hard. But then I thought, well, if I got on the air at, say, a station like KROQ, I could
make a ton of money.
Use that as my audition to get into KMET. So I started doing weekends at KROQ, and I figured, well, this will never last, because at that time, the station didn't even have a license. which is a whole nother story we can discuss if you want. But
Of course.
and one thing led to another, and
Yada, yada, yada.
KROQ kind of suited me, so I just stayed put.
Now, were you aware of KROQ? Obviously, you were, as a radio guy, you had flipped around through the dial.
I had listened for years. I was a listener. I'm a listener that went too far.
What was it about those early days of KROQ that attracted you? Like, well, I'll give this a shot, or something that intrigued you, like when they made you the offer, like,
they had the potential to be so many things, and I just didn't hear it at the time. It was just really sloppy and amateurish. Mm-hmm. And so KROQ eventually hired a program director with top 40 training by the name of Rick Carroll. And so he structured a little format. They wouldn't let him change too much about it. They wanted the music to stay. Mm-hmm. The ownership wanted the music to stay pretty much as it was, because I often used to have a little debate with Rick. Well, if it was up to you, we'd be doing nothing but Beatles weekends. And he'd say, well, if it was up to you, we'd be playing nothing but Frank Zappa freeform weirdness. So it was kind of like dynamic tension.
You were talking about the music, wanting to work at KMET before going on the air for practice at KROQ. Do you have a musical preference? Do you, I guess you should probably decline to say now since you're...
I've always been a fan of adventurous, different sounding music. Even in a top 40 context, I was always listening to B-sides and weird stuff and trying to sneak stuff on the air with various degrees of success.
So what was it about KMET wanting to be on the air at KMET?
Well, at the time, KMET was the 800-pound gorilla of radio, and in not just L.A., but in the country.
Yeah.
One of the most influential stations ever at that time. And KROQ was just a little toilet in Pasadena without a license.
A lot of listeners went from KMET to KROQ.
Yeah,
that
they
was
did.
the transition.
Oh, definitely.
So okay.
Yeah, but at the time, so they I can't remember who owned KMET. I mean, it was, they were...
It was Metro Media.
Yeah, so it was a big deal. Can you talk a little bit about the owners at that time?
That's quite a story there. Was just one guy by the name of Ken Roberts.
One guy.
He had been Sly Stone's manager, also Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, and Jay and the Americans. He was a businessman from Hoboken.
Perfect.
And
why are you making quotes when you say businessman?
Well, he just had that way about him.
Sure.
He had that mafia stare perfected, like that glare. Like, what do you want? Is every other fucking word he said was fucking. So he was like, he wasn't really a gangster, but he kind of like carried himself that way. And so he was a money guy. He had lent the original owners of KROQ, he had lent them $50,000 and to stage a concert with Sly Stone at Redondo Beach on a boat, some kind of a,
What can go wrong?
Yeah. Well, long story short, it sank in Redondo Beach Harbor. And it turns out that they never bothered to get any insurance. And so they ended up owing the city of Redondo Beach hundreds of thousands of dollars to get rid of this hulking wreck. And so all the owners of KROQ, because they had incorporated it as a general partnership as opposed to a limited partnership, that meant all the individual investors were each liable for the debts of the company. So all those people scattered to the four winds. Mm-hmm. And there was basically nobody left to run the station and, pay the bills. And so Ken Roberts saw his investment,
literally
flying away with wings on it.
Yeah.
So he figured he better do something. And at that time, the FCC had a rule that if you were dark, if you're not broadcasting after a certain day, you forfeit the license. So KROQ had been off the air for I don't know how long it was, but the deadline was fast approaching where if it didn't get back on the air, that they would no longer have the license. So Ken sent 2 guys up to the transmitter site. He paid the past due electric bills, and he bought some bare bones radio equipment. And he sent 2 guys up to the transmitter with bolt cutters and a reel-to-reel tape recorder. It was a Roberts tape recorder,
Of course.
incidentally, just to play a tape and get something on the air. And so as soon as that happened, that automatically reset the timeline. And so he became essentially a unlicensed creditor in possession of the station's assets. And so he wanted to get his, you say, all I want is my $50,000 back. And then it became, all I want is my $500,000 back.
Yeah.
And he saw that it could be turning into a lucrative thing, at least for him. Mm-hmm. Get a bunch of get a bunch of guys on the air and pay him however little he could get away with, and just basically let him do whatever they wanted as long as he didn't jeopardize the non-existent license, and get on there and swear and things like that.
So. And what year was this?
This was the late 70s, 78, 79, somewhere in there.
Okay, so
77 maybe.
All right, so young Freddie Snakeskin is looking for something.
Well, that time I was at 10Q, and I was, I was a KROQ listener, and I found the whole situation very interesting.
Were you aware of what was going on at this time?
Yeah, because I had a good friend that worked there.
Okay, and who was that?
I used to go up and visit him. There's a guy named Brad Sobel. Sandy Beach
Okay.
was his radio name. Very original. And so he was fascinated with my job at 10Q, and I was kind of fascinated with his station. So we'd visit each other back and forth. And he kind of filled me in on the story of Ken Roberts and what was going on.
And so when you interviewed, did you interview with Ken Roberts for the job?
No, I never met him
I
never met him until a couple of years after I'd started working there.
Oh, really?
He was just this enigmatic figure on a hill.
You just heard the story.
Heard the name, and
there's a talk of this man.
There's this grumpy old man. Oh, that's him! Wow.
So he wasn't a music guy; he was just a business guy.
He was a music guy in that he was in the concert promotion business and manager of artists. Like usually when their careers were failing, like Sly Stone and Frankie Valli. Mm-hmm. He became Frankie Valli's manager just before Grease.
Good timing.
So, yeah.
So it was like coming into KROQ just to...
All right, so now you're at KROQ.
Yeah.
Are you, is it an overnight shift? Is it a...
Well, I started weekends and then late nights and then afternoons.
And who was the PD? Or was there a PD?
The PD was Rick Carroll.
Okay.
He was the guy with top 40 sensibilities that... that I could sort of relate to because we both actually worked at real stations, unlike probably most of the other jocks.
Yeah, and so he's kind of credited with creating this format. I mean, he was
and basically he just applied top 40 formatics to all the weird music that KROQ was playing. He identified what were the hits, and he stressed those in rotation and. They wouldn't let him change too much, so he left one slot open every hour where we could play whatever we wanted, and that was in many ways the key to KROQ's early success is the freedom of the jocks to go out and find interesting music and no matter where it came from and bring it in and play it, which resulted in some really awful stuff on the air, but also. That's where many of the hits that we pioneered came from, especially the imports.
So is this? So you kind of found yourself. You were kind of like mining for gold a lot. Were you going to record stores or were there?
Yeah,
what was happening?
I was going to record stores. I was going to Pooh-Bahs all the time, and I had a friend who ran a record distributor in Lawndale, and he would just let me go in and scour the shelves and. Take whatever looked interesting. And so I'd walk out of there every week with this big Beacons box full of albums, imports, and just amazing stuff, most of which wasn't suitable for airplay, but it helped me fill in the gaps in my own collection and enabled KROQ to be first on the air with a lot of these strange imports. And we would play them in Rick's top 40 rotation, and the good ones would become hits. And then the American record companies would pick up on them and try to figure out what it was we were playing, and then go over to England and sign the bands. And then 6 months later, the record would come out here, by which time we were kind of done with it. And we were on to something else, so that didn't necessarily endear us to a lot of record companies.
You've got the What Difference Does It Make podcast on your dial. If there is such a thing as a dial, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Well, let's get back to the exciting conclusion of the What Difference Does It Make podcast.
And how did you figure out what was a hit? I mean, you had you got 3 songs during 3-4 hour shift?
Yeah.
So
4-hour shift.
So you got to introduce 4 new songs per shift. How would you figure out what a hit was? Or I mean, off one play.
Just basically if we liked it. And judging from what our listeners liked, I think this one will catch on.
Give me some examples.
So what were some that took
Blue
off?
Monday, My New Order, was just an unknown import when I first got it out of the box. And Billy Idol's first 12-inch, Dancing With Myself, was another one. And Depeche Mode and B-Movie and all those that we know and love today.
What were some of them that didn't? Some of your picks that you can think of that didn't make it, that you never played again?
Oh, there's too many of those.
Just one. I want to know if we've heard of it.
I do remember. I mean, it seemed like in the early days, if there was mention of sex or something, there was always something provocative about KROQ. I still remember there was a song like "Too Young to Date."
Oh yeah.
And I remember buying as a 14-year-old, this is crazy, and I remember searching that out. I love this song.
You play that today, you'd have parents marching on the station and lining the blocks.
But that's what you love playing.
Yeah.
I mean,
even our general manager made us stop playing that, or at least he made us start playing an edited version, where he's just talking about my menstrual cycle. They changed it to he's just talking about his favorite cycle.
Yeah, and that's
the radio edits,
right. But that's what made KROQ fun. I mean, it seemed like there was always something like drops, there was always activity going on. We were just looking at a YouTube video of you on the air.
Oh yeah.
First of all, you're smiling throughout the whole time the camera's on. You're having the time of your life.
It was so much fun.
I mean, it was clear that you're having a great time and you're getting away with something.
Yeah, some look like the cat that ate the canary. Some of your expressions.
But you always had drop. I mean,
Yes, we like to keep an active stage going. Well, I thought little snippets of tape, like from Dragnet and various old movies and TV shows, would sound weird and funny. So, I'd put those on a tape cartridge and just drop them in every now and then.
And it's still done to this day. I mean,
yes, it is, and only now they're on the records.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you listen to Kevin and Bean in the morning, and they're still doing they're taking old tape, and
it's an old radio trick. I don't claim to have invented it by any means.
Yeah, but it's kind of a thing now, from KROQ from the get go.
Yeah, we were kind of heavy handed about it back then, but that was kind of the fun.
Yeah, the radio landscape at the time. I mean, there was KMET, there was KLOS, and there was K-West, and there was another small station called KNEC that was also doing freeform.
Well, here's the deal. One of the ways that KROQ became popular is that at that time there weren't enough, say, new wave or KROQ type songs to build a viable format around. So we would play half, traditional AOR music, with the thought that people looking for K-West would find KROQ
I mean,
And,
flipping too far to the right.
Come for the Zeppelin, stay for the B-52s.
Yeah.
So this
And that worked rather well.
Yeah, that was why
answers our question about as we look at the top 106.7 songs
Yeah.
in 1980.
Yeah, there were some
shocked.
There was some real duds in there, that's for sure.
But yeah, you saw the Stones, the
Rush?
Kinks.
Yeah.
Rush. Yeah, Tom Sawyer. You played Tom Sawyer.
Many times.
Yeah.
And was this part of Rick Carroll's initial idea?
Yeah.
We'll play songs that this is, and
Well, there weren't that many Devos at the time. There weren't that many B-52s.
but when did the record company start sniffing like, okay, this might be something we're going to have to march? We got
Well, by about 1983, or thereabouts, the quality of KROQ type music that was available increased quite a bit, so we were able to shed the Van Halens and the Billy Squires and all that stuff, and kind of leave it in the sandbox and move on.
Was MTV an influence on what you were playing, or was it vice versa?
I think it was actually vice versa. Actually, MTV I think came along 82, something like that.
81.
Video killed the radio star and all that. And so we had an early partnership with MTV where we were promoting them on the air, and hopefully they were promoting us by playing our music.
Yeah, so that's it.
I think it worked out a little better for them.
You soon discovered fans became kind of passionate about the station, and
Very, very passionate.
Can you talk about a little bit about your whatever the business office was like or the station was like at Pasadena?
It was a real dump. It was the second floor of an old building, had a uniform shop on the first floor, and you climb this rickety staircase, and there'd be the underwhelming presence of KROQ up there with the cheap old tapestries across the windows and posters on the wall, and
but it was home.
It was, people can't tell what the environment it's coming from is like when it comes out of the radio. I mean, we could have had pristine studios, and
well, that was part of the joy of it. I mean, it sounded like this, magic was happening from the station.
If you've seen the video, you can see that they didn't really spend a whole lot of money on interior decorating.
Clearly not, but
did that add to the vibe? Did it add to the
we thought it was kind of tacky at the time, but looking back, it was, like you say, it was home.
Okay, so let's end our part one of the interview right here.
Wrapping up part one.
That's pretty interesting stuff.
Thanks, Freddie.
Yeah, this is great. We're going to divide this up into many episodes, and
maybe just 3.
3 sounds good. 3 is the magic number. So we will continue this next week. By the way, follow us on social media, Twitter, and Instagram. What do we got there?
WDDIM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and What Difference Does It Make on Facebook, and any podcast platform you choose.
Sounds great. So tune in next week for part 2 of our Freddie Snakeskin interview.
And thanks for listening to What Difference Does It Make?
Check you later.
Over and out.